Hey everyone, welcome to The Wildlife, a documentary series about the animals we share our planet with. I'm your host, Kevin, and today we're going to be talking about Lycaon pictus, the African wild dog. Before we get started, since this is the first episode of The Wildlife, I just want to take a moment to say thanks for joining me on this journey through the global ecosystem of chordates, and let you know how the series will work. This is a science-heavy show, so I'll be spitting out and laying down scientific names, which I promise to do my best to pronounce correctly, of the species we encounter, as well as the terms used in the fields of study concerning their behavior, conservation, and management. Now, if I pronunciate anything incorrectly, please let me know in the comments. That's just embarrassing. Each episode is going to focus on a single species and discuss as much as I can within 10 to 15 minutes concerning what makes that species unique, what challenges they face in the wild, where they live, and how they behave. I will always show you my references and link you to additional reading material, as well as interesting things to watch and explore. Sound good? Okay, let's dive in. Also known as Cape dogs or painted dogs, African wild dogs are a monotypic species, like humans and aardvarks, meaning that they're the only extant or living species in their respective genus. Don't confuse them with Canis lupus lycaon, though, North America's eastern gray wolf. These guys are not wolves, and while they're still a member of the family Canidae, they don't belong to the genus Canis. According to a 2019 study, Lycaon actually split off from Canis in the late Pleistocene, some 1.7-ish million years ago, in an evolutionary move most likely driven by the diversification of its prey species, large ungulates. The suite of adaptations the new genus evolved included things like variable coat coloration, dietary adaptations, and cursorial ability, which in turn influenced things like musculoskeletal build, phenotypic presentations and availability, dentition, and some other characteristics. Lycaon pictus is native to sub-Saharan Africa and is the largest indigenous canine on the African continent. Classified as endangered as of 2016 throughout its range by the IUCN, that's the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, Lycaon pictus has disappeared from much of its original historic range across the continent. While the species may be found in other areas, Lycaon pictus is confirmed to be extant by the IUCN in Chad, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Benin, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Malawi, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Botswana, South Africa, Namibia, and with a suspected population in eastern Algeria. So what are the observable differences between Lycaon and Canis? Well, for starters, these hypercarnivorous predators are distinguished primarily by their dentition, that is, their teeth. Now you may be scratching your head and thinking, wait, you're going to the teeth first? They don't even look the same, so why are you going to the teeth? And that's a solid question, and the reason is that, scientifically speaking, the dentition is the primary identifier in the fossil record. When everything else has been stripped away by time and erosion, the fossil record remains, if you're lucky. Lycaon pictus has the largest premolars relative to its body size of any living carnivore on the planet, save for the spotted hyena, Crocuta crocuta. Given that the wild dog is a lighter cursorial predator with a wildly different social structure and hunting style, this similarity is pretty striking. Further, specialized lower carnassials... Wait, let me back up a bit. A carnassial is the blade-like tooth that carnivores have in place of molars, which are the flat teeth you and I have in the back of our mouths. Whereas our molars are for grinding, carnassials are for shearing meat and splitting bone. Look at your dog or cat's back teeth the next time they yawn, and you'll see the blade-like teeth that we're talking about here. Those are carnassials. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, wild dogs have specialized lower carnassials, which feature a cutting blade in place of the talonid, and a reduction in size or outright loss of the postcarnassial molar, which is unique to a hypercarnivore, and can be observed in the dhole, Cuon alpinus, and bush dogs, Pithos venaticus, as well. If all this sounds like Greek to you, it's not. It's Latin. But ask your dentist or dental hygienist to explain the different parts of a tooth at your next cleaning appointment and impress them with your new knowledge of wild dog dentition. Other differences between Lycaon and Canis are far less subtle. The pelage, for instance, which is famously red, golden, brown, and white with random patterns of spots and striping across the body. While we're not entirely sure what the purpose of the coloration and patterning is, there are some theories that it may aid in camouflage, communication or concealment, and temperature regulation. For what it's worth, my money's on the disruptive camouflage bet, which is camouflage meant to break up the overall shape and features of an animal so that it's harder to see in the surrounding environment. It's something we see quite often in nature across a wide array of species, whereas coloration for communication and temperature regulation is much more rare. The second most eye-catching difference, next to their fur, is the wild dog's great big ears. Now, these have a great deal to do with thermoregulation, acting as giant radiators on top of the head to dissipate heat, as well as acting as sound dishes to direct their hearing. We can observe this type of biomechanical radiator in many African species, including the fennec fox, Vulpes zerta, the serval, Leptalurus serval, and elephants, Loxodonta africana, Loxodonta cyclotis, and Elephas maximus, which is actually the Asian elephant, so never mind. Anyway, wild dog ears also dramatically alter the silhouette of the animal, comparative to any other canid, and make them all stand out in a lineup. So those are some of the differences between Lycaon and Canis. But what are some similarities? Like their Canis cousins, wild dogs, or painted dogs, are a highly social, gregarious species which live in complex packs, organized mostly by family groups. Where most wolf packs are usually smaller, typically ranging from 4 to 8 individuals, though they can be much larger, wild dog packs are often quite large and can range up to 30 individuals, sometimes even a bit more. In a pack, the dominant pair or pairs breed, while less dominant individuals are typically subdued by behaviorally induced reproductive suppression, which is a fancy way of saying that either the less dominant females don't cycle, which is true in some cases, or the dominant individuals physically interrupt and dissuade other individuals from breeding, which is more often the case. Adults of both sexes contribute to parental care of pups, known as alloparenting. Litter sizes are typically anywhere between 2 to 20 pups, which is a mind-boggling difference, the upper limits of which would make Disney's Perdita proud. Wild dogs build strong, lifelong bonds with each other, which are reinforced through their hunting behavior, play, and social grooming. Belonging to an exclusive group of social carnivores, a theme we'll explore more across multiple episodes here on The Wildlife, wild dogs share the resources they compete for, which makes social cohesion a paramount concern in terms of survival skills. A dog that can't get along with the rest of the pack won't survive. In their book, Dogs, Their Fossil Relatives and Evolutionary History, Xiaoming, Wang, and Richard Tedford ask, why is it advantageous to hunt in a group? After all, living in groups does have its costs. Parasites are more easily spread in a group, thus often requiring mutual grooming. The spoils of group hunting must be shared, and the effort of raising the young must also be shared. Group hunting does have advantages, however, and behavioral ecologists have defined 3 factors in its favor: strength in numbers, protection of kills, and defense of territory. Generalist predators, the African wild dog occupies a wide range of habitats, which include short grass plains, desert-like regions, bushy savanna, and upland forests. Earlier studies in Tanzania originally led to a belief that Lycaon pictus was a far more specialized predator and primarily restricted by habitat to open plains, but much more recent data indicates that they reach their highest population densities in thicker bush. It also seems that the African wild dog's distribution is not limited by its specialization or the loss of specific habitat types, but rather by human activity and the availability of prey. That brings us to the challenges these gorgeous predators face in the wild. Painties, which is my favorite nickname for the species, face competition pressure primarily from 2 rival species in their home ranges: African lions, Panthera leo, and spotted hyenas, Crocuta crocuta. Of the 2, the lion acts as the chief apex predator in the system, while the hyena behaves mostly as a kleptoparasite, meaning that it harasses and chases wild dogs off their kills and steals them. Naturally, where the population density of lions is higher, wild dog densities are generally lower, and vice versa. Similarly, wild dog population densities are negatively correlated with higher hyena populations as well. This is where those group advantages we mentioned earlier come into play. Strength in numbers, protection of kills, and defense of territory all strengthen the wild dog's position in conflicts against both lions and hyenas where one-on-one interactions would be heavily lopsided. Wild dogs also face increasing pressure from human encroachment into wild spaces. According to the IUCN, active threats to the African wild dog populations include residential and commercial development, agriculture and aquaculture, energy production and mining, infrastructure development, biological resource use such as hunting, trapping, logging, and deforestation, human intrusions and the disturbances of war and civil unrest, invasive species and disease, and climate change. These threats, individually and in tandem, pose a web of acute challenges for the species, uniquely adapted to a specific ecological niche. And as with most species, these challenges are difficult to confront quickly and lead to a rapid population decline as a result of the inability to adapt at pace. The greatest challenge faced by any predator in the wild is the disappearance of the wild itself. Undeveloped, untrodden land is increasingly rare in the world, leaving little space where these animals and their prey species can live, grow, and successfully reproduce without human interaction and conflict. According to the IUCN, that's the number one threat challenging Lycaon pictus populations in the wild today: habitat fragmentation. It's responsible for increased contact with humans and domesticated animals, resulting in human-wildlife conflict and the transmission of infectious diseases like rabies, canine distemper, and parvovirus. Compounding this issue is the species' ranging behavior, or its propensity to travel immense distances as part of a standard territorial scout path. Wild dogs are a truly transitory creature, and because of this unique and unusual behavior, even the largest reserves and parks of some 5,000 square kilometers essentially become all edge or all border space. Conflict zones, in other words, where potential run-ins with humans and domesticated animals are more likely to occur. Secondary to concerns over humans and livestock conflicts are increasing apex competition pressures. With less available land and prey, competition for the remaining resources leads to increased conflict between apex predators, lions versus painted dogs, which more often than not leads to decreased wild dog populations. Predator management is one of the most confrontational and challenging issues facing humanity today, with multiple considerations from myriad viewpoints which must be taken into account for any single plan of action. Without a consortium of stakeholders actively working together in all aspects of development, from community planning to resource utilization, infrastructure development to agriculture, efforts to successfully coexist and steward predators in healthy ecosystems will not be successful outside of protected reserve areas. The irony of this is that predators are essential to the healthy management of any ecosystem, including rural buffers, national and state parks, prairies, grasslands, meadows, forests, and woodland natural areas, and yes, even the local community park. Without apex predators, mesopredators like coyotes and prey species overpopulate, which in turn decimate producers and smaller predator-scavenger populations, ultimately leading to population collapse. As I mentioned earlier, the greatest challenge facing this species in particular is habitat fragmentation, which depends wholly and conspicuously upon human attitudes towards land conservation. Without enough open land for prey resources, open ranging behavior, pack dispersal, and territorial safety from other apex predators, chiefly lions, African wild dogs will not survive. Humanity must actively choose to live in a world which is home to these animals and make the necessary sacrifices in terms of land use and development required to sustain viable populations of these species in the wild. That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show and that you learned something fun and interesting about the African wild dog, Lycaon pictus. Check out the references in the description and some of the suggested reading for those of you hungry to learn more. Articles from JSTOR can be accessed through your local library, so make sure you've got your membership card. I've also shared some links to wild dog conservation efforts and research programs if you're interested in ways to support these fantastic predators in the wild and our understanding of their roles in the ecosystem. Until next time, stay wild.